In the forgotten pit of the galaxy, nestled between dying stars and cosmic debris, lay a kingdom that had long since abandoned the principles of light. This realm, known as the Shadowmere Empire, had mastered a forbidden science, the harvesting of dead stars' essence. The Empire's capital city, Umbra Prime, stretched across an asteroid belt, its obsidian towers reaching toward the void. King Ethel, like once a brilliant astrophysicist, had discovered that the residual energy in stellar corpses contained not just physical power, but something far more precious, the echoes of consciousness itself. His research began innocently enough, funded by the Galactic Science Council, aimed at finding sustainable energy sources for dying worlds. However, the deeper he delved into the mysteries of stellar necromancy, the more twisted his ambitions became. The king's transformation from scientist to tyrant wasn't sudden. It began with small ethical compromises in his research, justified by the promise of breakthrough discoveries. His first major breakthrough came when he successfully extracted what he called stellar memories from a white dwarf star. These weren't just energy patterns. They were fragments of ancient wisdom, accumulated over billions of years as the star witnessed the evolution of countless civilizations. The Palace of Eternal Night, where King Ethel now resided, was built around his original laboratory. Its walls were lined with containment chambers holding swirling masses of stellar ash, each pulsing with an eerie, otherworldly glow. The central throne room housed his masterpiece, the Soul Extractor, a massive machine that could draw the very essence from living beings, combining it with the power of dead stars to create something entirely new. Princess Nira grew up watching her father's descent into darkness. As a child, she would sit in his lab, fascinated by the swirling colors of stellar ash, while he explained the principles of quantum consciousness and energy conversion. She inherited his brilliant mind, but also possessed something he had lost: empathy. While he saw the subjects of his experiments as mere data points, she saw their pain, their fear, their humanity. The princess maintained her own secret laboratory in a forgotten wing of the palace, hidden behind holographic walls that mimicked the decay of abandoned corridors. Here, she studied her father's research from a different angle, seeking ways to reverse the soul extraction process. Her work was dangerous not just because of her father's potential reaction, but because the technology itself was unstable. Several times, she nearly lost her own consciousness to the void while attempting to free trapped souls. The people of Shadowmere had changed since King Ethel began his experiments. Those who underwent soul extraction became hollow versions of themselves, perfect workers and soldiers who never questioned orders. Their eyes held no light, their voices no warmth. Yet they maintained just enough of their original consciousness to perform complex tasks, making them ideal subjects for expanding the Empire's influence. Nira found allies among the untouched population, those who had so far escaped her father's improvements. They formed a secret network, communicating through encrypted quantum frequencies that mimicked natural stellar radiation. Together, they documented the true history of their world, preserving memories of what life was like before the soul extraction began. Deep in the palace archives, Nira discovered her father's original research journals. They revealed that his work had started with a noble goal. He had been searching for a way to preserve the consciousness of dying species, hoping to give them a chance at continued existence. But somewhere along the way, preservation became transformation, and transformation became domination. The princess also uncovered evidence that the Galactic Science Council hadn't simply funded her father's initial research, they had specifically sought him out. There were other scientists across the galaxy working on similar projects, all pushing the boundaries of consciousness manipulation. This revelation led her to wonder, was her father's fall from grace entirely his own doing, or was he merely a successful experiment in someone else's grand design? As she delved deeper into these mysteries, Nira began to understand that the technology of soul extraction wasn't inherently evil. It was the intent behind its use that corrupted it. In her secret lab, she managed to modify a small soul extractor, reversing its polarity to act as a soul amplifier instead. Her tests showed that it could potentially strengthen a person's consciousness, making them more resistant to extraction attempts. But her father's power grew with each passing cycle. The more souls he consumed, the more his influence spread across the sector. His fleet of dark ships, powered by captured consciousnesses, patrolled the space lanes, seeking out new worlds ripe for improvement. The king's advisors, those who still retained their original minds, whispered that he was no longer entirely human, that the accumulated knowledge of countless absorbed souls had transformed him into something else entirely. Despite the darkness that surrounded her, Princess Nira never lost hope. She knew that somewhere in the vast expanse of space, others must be fighting similar battles against those who had sacrificed consciousness for power. Her experiments continued in secret, and she documented everything, encrypting her findings in the very fabric of space-time using quantum entanglement techniques she had developed. As the first chapter of this dark tale drew to a close, the princess stood at her laboratory window, watching the ethereal dance of stellar ash in the distance. She knew that soon she would have to move beyond simple observation, and time was coming when she would need to take direct action to find allies beyond the boundaries of her father's kingdom. Little did she know that help would arrive in the form of a wolf queen, whose eyes held the power of black holes, setting in motion events that would shake the very foundations of the Shadowmere Empire. The night Queen Anna arrived at the Palace of Eternal Night, the stellar ash storms were particularly violent, casting an otherworldly aurora across Shadowmere's perpetually dark skies. The Wolf Queen's ship, an organic-looking vessel that seemed to breathe and pulse with its own life force, descended through the turbulent atmosphere like a falling star. Its surface, covered in what appeared to be living metal infused with bioluminescent veins, reflected the chaos of the surrounding storms. Queen Anna's reputation preceded her. Throughout the galaxy, stories were told of the mysterious wolf people of Lunaris, a race that had evolved from ancient canine species and developed the ability to harness the gravitational forces of black holes. Their eyes, it was said, contained microscopic singularities that gave them the power to see possible futures and manipulate the fabric of space-time itself. As she strode through the palace corridors, her footsteps silent despite her impressive stature, palace guards found themselves unable to look directly at her. Her presence commanded attention, yet inspired instinctive fear, not unlike the celestial phenomena her people had learned to control. A deep silver that seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously, rippled with each movement like liquid mercury. The ceremonial armor she wore was forged from metals found only in the accretion disks of black holes, metals that shouldn't exist in stable form. King Ethel received her in his throne room, surrounded by swirling containers of stolen souls that cast ghostly shadows across the obsidian walls. Princess Nira, standing quietly in the shadows, observed the exchange with keen interest. She had never seen another being who could match her father's imposing presence, but Queen Anna managed to do so effortlessly. Great King of Shadowmere, Queen Anna's voice resonated with harmonics that seemed to vibrate at the quantum level. I come seeking aid for my dying world. The black hole that has long been the source of our power is destabilizing. Our scientists predict catastrophic collapse within one stellar cycle. The Wolf Queen explained that Lunaris had built its civilization around a carefully controlled microscopic black hole, using its gravitational energy to power their world. For millennia, they had maintained perfect equilibrium, feeding the singularity with precisely calculated amounts of matter, while harvesting its hawking radiation. But something had changed. The black hole was growing hungry, demanding more than they could safely provide. King Ethel listened with faint interest, his fingers absently stroking the arm of his throne, which pulsed with the essence of trapped souls. Princess Nira noticed how her father's eyes kept darting to the quantum singularities in Queen Anna's eyes, his scientific curiosity warring with his political cunning. The solution seems obvious, King Ethel finally responded, his voice dripping with false sympathy. Feed your people to the black hole. Their mass should sustain it long enough for you to find a more solution. His cruel suggestion hung in the air like poison. Queen Anna's fur bristled, the silvery strands catching and distorting light in impossible ways. We are not monsters who sacrifice our own people, she growled, her diplomatic veneer cracking slightly. We seek a way to stabilize the singularity without loss of life. Your research into stellar essence suggested you might have the knowledge we need. What the Wolf Queen didn't reveal was that her people's seers had witnessed multiple possible futures. In sum, the combination of Shadowmere's soul technology and Lunaris's gravitational manipulation created something revolutionary, a way to stabilize not just their black hole, but the very fabric of space-time around dying stars. In others, this same combination led to catastrophic consequences that rippled across the galaxy. Princess Nira, watching from her hidden vantage point, saw something in Queen Anna that others missed. Beneath the proud bearing and fierce appearance was desperation, not just for herself, but for every living being on her world. The princess recognized a kindred spirit, someone else who understood the burden of protecting others from powers beyond their control. King Ethel's refusal was diplomatic, but firm. He claimed that his soul extraction technology was still experimental, too dangerous to share with outsiders. In reality, he feared the potential of combining his soul manipulation with the Wolf people's gravitational technology. Such a combination might create something beyond even his control. As Queen Anna prepared to leave, her disappointment manifesting as subtle distortions in the space around her, Princess Nira made a decision that would alter the fate of both worlds. Using the quantum encryption techniques she had developed, she sent a microscopic packet of data directly to one of the singularities in the Wolf Queen's eyes. It contained coordinates for a secret meeting and a simple message: "I can help." Later that night, in a forgotten section of the palace gardens where the stellar ash fell like snow, Princess Nira met with Queen Anna. The princess explained her own research into soul manipulation, including her discoveries about reversing and amplifying the process. The Wolf Queen, in turn, revealed more about the true nature of their dying world and the devastating choices they faced. Together, they realized that the solution might lie not in feeding the black hole more matter, but in using modified soul essence to stabilize its quantum structure. The stellar ash the King Ethel hoarded contained not just consciousness, but fundamental patterns of space-time itself. If properly processed and combined with the Wolf people's gravitational technology, it might provide exactly what Lunaris needed. The plan they formed was dangerous and complex. Princess Nira would need to infiltrate her father's most secure vaults, accessing not just the stellar ash, but also his original research notes. Queen Anna would need to prepare her people for an untested procedure that combined two of the most dangerous forces known to science: consciousness manipulation and gravitational singularities. As their clandestine meeting concluded, both women understood the gravity of what they were undertaking. They were not just risking their own lives, but gambling with forces that could potentially tear reality itself apart. Yet the alternative, allowing an entire civilization to be consumed by a hungry black hole or sacrificed to King Ethel's soul extraction, was unthinkable. Queen Anna departed as silently as she had arrived, her ship vanishing into the stellar ash storms. Princess Nira returned to her secret laboratory, knowing that everything was about to change. The theft she was planning would either save a world or doom two, and there was no way to predict which outcome was more likely. The vast expanse of space between Shadowmere and Lunaris became a theater of war, unlike any the galaxy had witnessed before. King Ethel's fleet emerged from the stellar ash clouds like a swarm of dark predators, each ship powered by the tortured souls of his subjects. The vessels themselves were nightmarish constructions of black metal and crystalline matrices, designed to channel soul energy, their hulls adorned with containment chambers that glowed. Leading the armada was King Ethel's flagship, the Soul Harvester, a behemoth that dwarfed all other vessels in his fleet. Its very presence distorted the fabric of reality, as the combined essence of thousands of captured souls created a field of pure anguish that could be felt even through the cold vacuum of space. The ship's central chamber housed a scaled-up version of his soul extraction technology, ready to process entire populations at once. On Lunaris, Princess Nira and Queen Anna worked frantically to complete their desperate plan. The stolen stellar ash, combined with the Wolf people's gravitational technology, had created something entirely new, a fusion of consciousness and space-time that they called the Soul Singularity. In theory, it would not only stabilize the planet's dying black hole, but also protect them from King Ethel's soul extraction technology. The surface of Lunaris was a stark contrast to Shadowmere's eternal darkness. Here, the environment was shaped by the controlled power of their microscopic black hole, creating impossible landscapes where gravity itself seemed to flow like water. Crystal spires grew sideways and upward simultaneously, while rivers of light traced patterns through the air, guided by the wolf people's gravitational manipulation. As King Ethel's fleet approached, Queen Anna activated Lunaris's planetary defense systems. Massive gravitational lenses flickered to life, bending space itself to create barriers against the incoming assault. The wolf people's warriors took up positions around the main Singularity Control Center, their armor incorporating the same living metal as their ships, their eyes blazing with the power of contained black holes. Princess Nera watched the approaching armada from Lunaris's primary observation tower, her heart heavy with the knowledge that she had helped trigger this confrontation. The stolen souls they had used to create the soul singularity swirled in its containment field, their combined consciousness creating patterns that seemed to predict possible futures, most of them dark. The battle began with a display of power that shook the very foundations of space-time. King Ethel's ships launched their first assault, firing beams of concentrated soul energy that could strip the consciousness from any living being they touched. These attacks encountered Lunaris's gravitational shields, creating spectacular collisions of physics and metaphysics that lit up the sky with impossible Queen Anna led her forces from the front, her flagship utilizing technology that could temporarily create localized areas of intense gravitational distortion. These gravity wells trapped several of King Ethel's smaller vessels, crushing them into density-compressed shards of metal and crystal. For every ship they destroyed, 2 more emerged from the stellar ash clouds, as if the very darkness of space was spawning them. Princess Nera worked desperately at the control center, attempting to stabilize the soul singularity as the battle raged around them. The device was proving difficult to control. The combined consciousness of thousands of stolen souls kept trying to break free of its containment, driven by their own desires and fears. Each time the singularity pulsed, it sent ripples through reality that affected both friend and foe alike. King Ethel's voice boomed across all communication channels, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "My dear daughter," he said, his tone mixing anger with an almost proud amusement. "Did you really think you could steal from me without consequences? That you could take my life's work and turn it against me?" As he spoke, the Soul Harvester moved into position above Lunaris's capital city. The massive ship's soul extraction array began to power up, its cruel machinery designed to harvest consciousness on a planetary scale. The air itself seemed to grow heavy with dread as the device charged, reality distorting around its focal point. Queen Anna's warriors launched a desperate counterattack, their ships diving through the gravitational distortions like silver arrows, their weapons combining physical and gravitational forces to tear through the enemy fleet's defenses. But for every victory they achieved, King Ethel's overwhelming numbers pushed them back further. The turning point came when King Ethel himself teleported directly into the Singularity Control Center, using technology that had been augmented by the very souls he had stolen. His presence was overwhelming, no longer just a cruel king, but something that had evolved beyond humanity through his experiments with consciousness manipulation. "My pure daughter," he said, approaching Princess Nera with deliberate steps, "by betraying me, you actually gave me the greatest gift of all, the idea of uniting the power of 2 planets." His eyes gleamed with an unprecedented darkness, reflecting the souls of countless victims trapped within his being. As father and daughter faced each other across the control center, Queen Anna launched her final gambit. She had secretly modified her own consciousness using a combination of wolf people technology and Princess Nera's reversed soul extraction process. She stood ready to merge her enhanced consciousness with the soul singularity, hoping to stabilize it with the power of her own will. The battle reached its climax as 3 immense powers converged: King Ethel's corrupted soul energy, the Wolf Queen's gravitational mastery, and the unstable potential of the soul singularity. The fabric of space-time began to tear around them, creating windows into other possibilities, other timelines where different choices had led to different outcomes. Princess Nira watching in horror as her father seemed to grow in power, absorbing the very energy of the battle itself. She realized too late that this had been his plan all along, to force a confrontation that would allow him to harvest not just individual souls, but the combined power of two civilizations' most advanced technologies. The chapter ends with King Ethel moving to seize control of both the Soul Singularity and Lunaris's black hole containment systems, his power seeming utterly unstoppable. Queen Anna and Princess Nira exchange one last look, knowing that their next action would determine the fate not just of their own worlds, but potentially of consciousness itself throughout the galaxy. The moment of King Ethel's triumph was marked not by thunderous celebration, but by the terrifying silence of stolen souls. As he stood in the heart of Lunaris's control center, reality itself seemed to bend around him, distorted by the combined power of soul energy and gravitational forces. The merging of the two planets' technologies created something far more terrible than either Princess Nira or Queen Anna had anticipated. It gave birth to a being who could manipulate both consciousness and space-time at will. King Ethel's transformation was horrifyingly beautiful. His form flickered between states of matter and energy, each pulse releasing waves of dark power that reshaped the surrounding space. The souls he had consumed over the years became visible as swirling patterns beneath his skin, their consciousness forever trapped in an eternal dance of agony. His eyes, once merely cruel, now contained the same quantum singularities as the wolf people's, but corrupted and twisted by his malevolent will. The greatest experiments, he declared, his voice resonating across multiple dimensions simultaneously. With a gesture that bent light itself, unexpected results, he began the process of merging the newly formed life energy on Lunaris with his own dark magic. The Soul Singularity, designed to save the wolf people's world, instead became a conduit for his enhanced powers. Princess Nira and Queen Anna, their bodies already beginning to crystallize from his attack, fought against the transformation with every ounce of their remaining strength. The Wolf Queen's gravitational powers clashed with the petrification process, creating beautiful but futile patterns of distorted space-time around her turning to stone Princess form. Nira's own consciousness, enhanced by her research into soul manipulation, tried desperately to maintain a connection with her physical form. But King Ethel's power was absolute. The crystallization process was not mere petrification. It was a fundamental restructuring of reality around his victims. Each molecule of their bodies was individually transformed, trapping not just their physical forms, but the very essence of their consciousness in a state of eternal awareness. They would remain forever conscious, forever aware, but unable to act or speak or even scream. As the transformation completed, King Ethel took a moment to admire his handiwork. The two figures, now perfect stone statues, captured every detail of their final moments of Queen defiance. Anna's form remained proud and fierce, her stone fur seeming to ripple in an endless wind, her crystallized eyes still containing hints of the black holes that had given her people their power. Princess Nira's statue showed her reaching out toward an unknown salvation, her face a mask of determination. "You shall serve as my greatest achievement," he told the statues as he arranged them in what would become their eternal placement in his palace gardens. A reminder that all power, all consciousness, all reality itself bends to my will. The aftermath of King Ethel's victory transformed both planets in fundamental ways. Shadowmere's technology for soul extraction was combined with Lunaris's gravitational manipulation to create a new form of control over life itself. Those who survived the initial conquest were not simply subjected to soul extraction. They were transformed into hybrid beings that served as living conduits for King Ethel's power. The palace gardens where the statues stood became a place of dark pilgrimage. Other rulers from across the galaxy came to witness the fate of those who dared to oppose King Ethel. The stone figures of Princess Nira and Queen Anna stood as silent witnesses to countless diplomatic meetings where more worlds surrendered to his growing empire, choosing each submission as was his custom. King Ethel would walk through the gardens, past the statues of his daughter and the Wolf Queen, The dark smile that played upon his lips held secrets of power that no mortal being was meant to possess. The consciousness of every soul he had consumed, including the partial essences of Nera and Anna trapped in their stone forms, contributed to his ever-growing understanding of the universe's fundamental forces. The most terrible aspect of his victory was not the physical conquest of 2 planets, but the philosophical implications of his triumph. Throughout history, stories had taught that good would eventually overcome evil, that light would always banish darkness. King Ethel's victory proved that some hearts were so dark, so fundamentally corrupted, that they could not only resist the light, but consume it, transform it, and use it to create deeper darkness. Years passed, and King Ethel's empire grew ever larger. The combination of soul extraction technology and gravitational manipulation allowed him to harvest consciousness on an unprecedented scale. Entire civilizations were transformed into living batteries for his power, their collective consciousness feeding his godlike abilities, while their bodies served as automated workers and soldiers. The stone statues in his garden remained perfect, untouched by time or weather. Sometimes visitors to the palace would report seeing tears of liquid starlight running down Princess Nera's stone cheeks during the darkest hours of night. Others claimed they could hear the faint echo of Queen Anna's growl in the wind that blew through the garden. King Ethel dismissed these stories as superstition, but he knew the truth. Their consciousness remained intact within the stone, experiencing every moment of his dark reign. The most chilling aspect of King Ethel's victory was its completeness. Not only had he conquered 2 powerful civilizations, but he had also proven that the very forces of reality could be bent to serve darkness. The fundamental laws of physics, the sacred boundaries between consciousness and matter, between soul and spacetime, all became tools for his expansion of power. The galaxy learned a harsh truth, that power, regardless of its source or original purpose, could be corrupted by those with sufficient darkness in their souls. The story of Princess Nera and Queen Anna became a cautionary tale, whispered among those who still dared to dream of resistance. Their failure to stop King Ethel was seen not as a weakness, but as proof of how completely darkness could triumph over light when wielded by a will strong enough to embrace total corruption. As King Ethel stood in his garden on the anniversary of his victory, watching the light of dying stars reflect off the perfect stone faces of his greatest opponents, he understood that his triumph was more than just a military or technological victory. He had succeeded in rewriting the very nature of reality itself, proving that in some corners of the universe, darkness could achieve such density that no light, no matter how bright, could ever escape its hold. The statues remained, eternal monuments to betrayal, yes, but also testaments to the ultimate victory of corruption over purity, of power over principle. And in the endless nights that followed, as King Ethel's empire continued to expand across the stars, those stone figures stood as silent witnesses to a truth that the galaxy had never wanted to accept. Sometimes the darkness wins,